You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast. This is the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me at official Sam Little on Instagram. There's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, welcome back to another episode of the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. And yeah, today, Prem recap, obviously, but first and foremost, we're going to kick things off with the Maple Start, which is what I think I've named this segment, where I talk about the week for Canadian football. And starting off, first and foremost, I did do my CPL recap podcast episode for the CPL final, which was, of course, contested between Cavalry and Forge. Check that out if you haven't. I think it's a good episode. Covered a lot in there. Talked a lot, as per usual. And it was a lot of fun to cover that, so definitely go check that out. Sticking with the CPL, of course, we will first talk about Cavalry winning over Forge. I'll keep it short and sweet because I did, of course, do an entire coverage for it. But yeah, Cavalry wins the Canadian Premier League playoffs, the North Star Cup, for the first time in their history. Having teased greatness a good few times, they finally grabbed that brass ring. Forge have been in 6 finals and have won 4, so definitely not a terrible record at all. And the CPL awards were also held, and some winners, of course. So let me quickly go through that, because of course it was the Canadian Premier League awards, and some Canadians did in fact win awards. So very quickly, just because I did already cover this in a past episode, but want to include it here. Emil Gazdov wins Golden Glove. Kwesi Poku wins Best Canadian U21 Player. Tobias Warchevsky wins Golden Boot. Dan Klump wins Defender of the Year. Brian Wright wins Players Player of the Year. Bobby Simeonis wins Coach of the Year, and Tristan Borges wins for the second time Player of the Year. Quickly wanted to just say that because a massive congratulations to the Canadian boys that repped, and of course just anyone else that won at the CPL Awards. Moving away from the CPL Awards, big week for Canadian football as Jonathan David kind of kickstarted what would be a very good week, as he did score against Juventus in the Champions League. This boy is on fire. Oh my gosh, this is the best I think we've ever seen Jonathan David play, and my goodness, he is a player. Oh my gosh, makes me feel very silly anytime I had said anything bad about him, because my word, what a player. In my opinion, probably the 3rd best striker in the world at this very moment. Yeah, that's right, come for me, I said it, 3rd best in the world. He's just behind Kane and Haaland, and I think you could probably hold a debate that he could be better than Erling Haaland at this moment, because Haaland has hit a bit of a dip in form, if we're being honest. But yeah, definitely my opinion, I think 3rd best striker in the world. Alistair Johnston, big week in the UCL as well. He doesn't get a technical assist for Celtic, but he puts in a ball that's kind of deflected off of the goalkeeper and shoveled home by one of the other Celtic boys. So Alistair Johnston, a big week for him as well, as he then carried on from a win in the Champions League into a win in the league, where he did get an actual technical assist in a 2-0 win. So big week for Alistair Johnston. I mean, it seems like it's always a big week for Alistair Johnston. That boy's always winning or scoring or getting an assist or getting a clean sheet or all of the above. What a player. We're lucky to have him, aren't we? Alphonso Davies, also Champions League triumph, and it saw him in the UCL Team of the Week. So big congrats to Alphonso Davies. Some sad news, though. He did have to pull out of the Canadian squad, being replaced by a player that I greatly admire, Sam Adekubi. But obviously, you never want to see a player injured, especially Alphonso Davies. But hopefully, it's just a knock. It seemed like Bayern were keeping him back, just precautionary. So it hopefully isn't anything super duper mega serious, as it is just precaution. Speaking of injury, I believe I mentioned it last episode that Cornelius ended up going out injured in his game 2 weekends ago now, I guess at this point. It's good-ish news, as apparently it's not super serious and shouldn't keep him out for too long, but obviously an injury is still an injury and is never a positive never a positive thing. So, hopefully it is just minor. Moving into some nice news for Big Daniil Henry. Yes, I've never really, I don't think I've ever talked about him on the podcast. I'm a big fan of Daniil Henry, of course, no longer a player, but was just announced as the head coach of Barrie Soccer Club. So big congrats to Daniil Henry. He has been a great ambassador and a great character for Canadian football for so long. So it is very nice to see him, it looks like, start a coaching career. So yeah, just shout out Daniil Henry. Absolutely loved him as a player. Was just such a rock at the center back position, and I absolutely loved him. Moving back into players, Stefan Eustáquio has got his goal scoring boots on recently. Got a second goal of the season. This one coming in the Europa League against Lazio, which drew Porto level at the time of scoring the goal, but sadly they ended up losing thanks to Pedro. Yeah, you bet you haven't heard that name in a long time. As he scored in the 92nd minute, and things kind of didn't get any better for Porto over the weekend as they then lost 4-1 to Benfica, but we still love Eustáquio, of course. Next, Vancouver have been dumped out of the MLS playoffs. Very much sadly. We would have loved to have seen a Canadian team kind of go far. So I'm going to be supporting Minnesota United going further. Hopefully they do, because they've got two Canadian internationals, and Tani Oluwaseyi and Dane St. Clair. Dane St. Clair, who, by the way, has been on fire in these playoffs. I know I've kind of talked about it, but I won't not talk about it, because shout out Dane St. Clair. Great playoffs so far, and hopefully him and Tani Oluwaseyi can win the MLS Cup, as the favorites, Inter Miami, were dumped out. And I know you didn't come for an MLS Cup playoff recap, but it's very nice to see Inter Miami dumped out. So, yeah. But lastly, we had two Canadian derbies in the French League. And the winner was Auxerre. The only one that won was Auxerre. Who would have thought? The pitted to be relegation battlers, Auxerre, are now sitting pretty in the top half, I believe. Last I checked, they were top half. Let me double check this right now. They are, they're up to 9th now. When I checked, they were in 6th, but then obviously they were the Friday night game, so other games have obviously been played since then. But yeah, they're now in 9th, which is a nice spot. Currently 6 points off relegation, and hopefully that sticks and keeps holding, because I would love to see Theo Bair continue to prosper. He, of course, took on Marseille's Kone and the injured Derek Cornelius. It ended up being a 3-0 win for Auxerre. A very big win over Marseille, who have had a very good start to the season. But yeah, inevitably it is Auxerre who do score, and the game was done and dusted by halftime. 3 goals, 2 of them in quick succession, one in the 43rd and one in the 45th. And from there, it never looked like Auxerre were looking back. Ishmael Kone was introduced at halftime, and that's all she wrote for that one. Moving into Nice and Lille, a very dramatic game. No, Jonathan David didn't score, very shockingly. But yeah, it was a back and forth game for sure. Lille took the lead early-ish, and then out of the second half, then Nice get one back, then Lille get another one, then in the 96th, Bombito's Nice end up getting another one. There is a great picture going around online of Bombito and Jonathan David on the pitch together. Bombito actually marking Jonathan David. Very, very funny, because obviously in less than a week, they'll be teammates again. So it's those moments where you remember how far Canadian football has come. And another great photo was released, I think I posted on my Twitter, of Derek Cornelius was actually at the game and with Bombito and Jonathan David after the game. And once again, just one of those moments where you smile and go, yeah, we've come a pretty freaking long way, haven't we? Beautiful to see 5 Canadians playing in League 1. And last but certainly not least, Christine St. Clair has officially retired from the game, having lost in the playoffs over the weekend. But that is obviously not an indictment on her career, as she was many times the winner for Canadian football. And when Canadian football wasn't as prosperous as it was, we always had Christine St. Clair in the dark times. And without her, Canadian football is nowhere, and I repeat, nowhere near where it is without her. So I know I've congratulated her on the career that she had a good few times on this podcast, but she deserves all the congratulations. So once again, a big congratulations to Christine St. Clair, the greatest woman, in my opinion, to ever lace them up. Just an unreal ambassador of the Canadian game and an unreal player. Just so happy for her that she did end up getting that gold medal. You know what I mean? And that does conclude the Maple Start. So let's get into the Premier League recap. Let's get into it. Of course, match of the weekend, biggest winners of the weekend, biggest underperformers of the weekend, best performance, moment of the weekend, relegation zone, and European places, and title race. Sorry, I forgot title race. So, of course, match of the weekend, let's kick things off. I would say definitely one of the match of the weekend was Brentford and Bournemouth. Fast-paced, well-contested between two teams that are really trying to build a reputation in the Premier League and are succeeding, I would say, especially in the last couple of seasons. They've really, I think, earned a lot of people's respect and have just been going about their business very quietly, but have slowly but surely really, like I said, just really gained people's respect over the last couple of seasons, and this season's no different. Brentford come out on top of this one, the 3-2 thriller. A very, very eventful game, I would say. Saw Bournemouth take the lead in the 17th, then Johan Wissa cuts that as he scores just 10 minutes later. Justin Kluivert scores right after halftime. Then Damsgaard and Wissa score within 8 minutes of each other, as they would then see out the 3-2, but it did not quiet down after that. Both teams had chances after that, and it was like just a very nice, fast-paced, proper Premier League game that you kind of love to see, and one of the reasons why you really enjoy watching this league. Another match, potentially maybe not for the style of play or anything like that, but 2-1 Ipswich, Tottenham. Tottenham are the Robin Hood, it feels like, of the Premier League, taking points from the rich and giving to the poor. The poor in this sense would be the bottom half teams, and the rich in this sense being the top half teams, because Tottenham will never not Tottenham, I feel. Sorry, Tottenham fans, but Liam Delap continues his unreal season. How this boy didn't get an England call-up is beyond me, because he has been one of the players of the season this year. 6 goals, 1 assist, involved in both goals on the day. Guys like Hutchinson, Johnson, David, and O'Shea, Twanzebe were all very good for Ipswich on the day. Tottenham, on the other hand, like I said, they Tottenham, they start looking really good throughout the season, but never really capitalizing on much momentum. You know, Dominic Solanke gets a goal ruled out. Brennan Johnson wasn't as influential as he would have liked to have been. Son Heung-min, once again, same thing as Johnson, not as influential. Kulusevski and Bentancur. Bentancur gets the goal, but had a quiet afternoon outside of that. But yeah, this is really mainly here because I'm very happy as someone that's kind of quietly rooting Ipswich on to stay up this season. It's their first win of the season, so it's definitely massive for them, and that's really why it's one of my matches of the weekend. But yeah, either way, check out some highlights of either Ipswich and Tottenham or Brentford and Bournemouth, and if you don't, then you're missing out. So definitely go check them out. Moving into biggest winners of the weekend, and does anybody want to place a bet on who I'm going to say first and foremost? I'll tell you this, it's their, I believe, got to be their 11th. This is week 11. This is probably their 11th week in a row, and it's Liverpool. Currently a 5-point lead on City, and everyone else is kind of just stuck on 19 points and 18 points from third place to ninth place. So yeah, really just separating themselves from Manchester City at this moment in time, as City have found it extremely hard to kind of cope without Rodri. I think for anybody saying that Ballon d'Or wasn't earned, I would then say look at how badly City has fallen off without him. They are one of the best teams in the world, and even without Rodri, they look a totally different side. They don't miss Foden this much when he's out. They don't miss Kevin De Bruyne this much when he's out. They don't miss anybody this much when they're out, apart from maybe Erling Haaland. They don't miss them, but they miss Rodri, and I think it is very much showing. Liverpool at this moment, 5 points up on them, 11 match weeks in, still obviously a ton of season to go, and we're all still waiting for that City undefeated run of like 13 to 17 games that they always end up going on each season. So it'll be up to Liverpool to kind of weather the storm throughout that. But yeah, Liverpool playing really, I wouldn't even say really well right now. They're just getting results really well at this moment in time. As I've kind of been saying, Liverpool maybe not the most impressive team throughout the season so far, but the team that gets it done the best, if that makes sense. Because I haven't been overly enamored with Liverpool this year, but my goodness, they know how to grind out results, and that's what champions have to do. If you want to be a champion, even when you don't deserve a win, you still find a win, and that's what Liverpool have been doing. All fairness, I think they deserve their win this weekend against Aston Villa, if that's any consolation prize for you. But yeah, no, definitely one of my winners of the weekend. Another winner of the weekend I've already alluded to, Ipswich, of course, just because first win of the season, I think it's massive for them, and definitely a step hopefully in the right direction. Takes them out of the relegation zone just by 1 point, but it all counts at this moment in time. And Wolverhampton Wanderers get their first win of the season. It was a weekend of firsts. Every team now has at least one win under their belt this season. So shout out Ipswich and Wolves. Another, I would say, big winner of the weekend. I know. Manchester United, I would say you kind of have to put them in here just because bounced back rather nicely after sacking Eric Ten Hag, a draw last weekend against Chelsea, and a 3-0 thumping of Leicester this weekend. Now, I'm not saying that, United is back. I'm not that foolish. I've seen this play out for Manchester United over the last, when did Ferguson leave? 2011, 2012. I've seen it play out over the last, 11 to 13 years, whenever was his last year. I've seen it play out, is what I'm saying. And I'm not going to be fooled into thinking that they're back. But credit where it is due, a big thumping of Leicester with Garnacho and Fernandes getting the goals, and then Christensen gets an own goal for Leicester. So, yeah, I mean, pretty big for United. Does that take them out of the bottom half? No, it doesn't. They are still in the bottom half, but just barely. Only a point keeping them out of the top half range. And we'll see what their new manager can bring for them. Moving into biggest underperformers of the weekend. Who would have thought that City would be on here 2 weekends in a row? But yeah, as I kind of already mentioned, really, really missing Rodri at this moment in time. And like I said, if you think he doesn't deserve the Ballon d'Or, hey, that's fair. But the disrespect on Rodri's name, I'm not even his biggest fan, but it's really irritating me. Everybody going around like it was Vinicius's award, like he had a divine right to win this award. Guys, Vinicius had a good year, but we're talking about his season like he was prime Messi, and that Rodri is this evil entity that came in and snapped it up at the last minute. My goodness, Rodri had a great year. He's a very good player. Come on, credit where it's due. And you're seeing how important he is to his team with their recent results. This is 4 losses in a row for the first time ever for Manchester City in their Pep Guardiola era. And guys, he's been with Manchester City for a good few years. It's not like this is like his second year. And it's like, oh, well, it's his first time in 2 years. No. This is like his first time in how long has he been there? 8-9 years, I think. When did he first get appointed? 2016, I think. So 8 years, going on 9 years, and he's just now suffered 4 losses in a row. Come on, come on. Rodri is a very good player, and we're seeing how much this team misses him. They lose to Brighton. 2-1. And yeah, Liverpool's going to be very happy with that because, like I said, separates them further from Manchester City. So I think City's going to need a big-time bounce back after the international break. But yeah, I don't really have any other big-time underperformers of the weekend. I think everyone else performed to a relatively decent standard. The relegation kind of sides either played each other, so you know what, we'll throw Southampton in there, just because they were on the losing end of Wolves. So I guess we'll put Southampton there. But I would say definitely the biggest underwhelmers, whatever we want to call it, are definitely Manchester City. Moving into best performance of the weekend. And I'm circling back to the Brentford game here. I want to give a shout out to Johan Wissa, 2 goals. And I think he just had a very good game. You know, he's been quietly a very good player for Brentford recently and has really stepped into that Ivan Toney starting striker role. I think better potentially than some people would have expected given how crucial Toney was to the team, but Wissa's really stepped in. He's gotten those 2 goals. He's gotten 7 goals on the season, an assist as well to throw in there just cuz. And yeah, I just thought it was a very class performance. Really, really brought out the best in Damsgaard and Mbomo throughout the game as he has throughout the season. And yeah, just a solid performance from him. So I want to give a special little shout out to Wissa. Another player, of course, I already also mentioned him, Liam Delap, one of the standout performers so far in these 11 weeks, I would say. He's had a great season, has really helped carry the Ipswich pressure on his back, and is really, really kind of enjoying his playing time. And I think that's one of the reasons I would assume why he's left Manchester City, is to get that playing time that he probably wasn't going to get at Manchester City. So very good on him. Hopefully that form continues. And yeah, another great performance from him. And just Wolves as a whole for finally getting their first win of the season. You know, quick goal 2 minutes in for Sanabria, and then Matthias Cunha, who assisted the first goal, gets a second goal, the icing on the cake, to really see out that 2-0 win over Southampton. So we'll say them as a whole as well. Moving into moment of the weekend, and I'm debating renaming this the Reece James moment of the weekend, just because Reece James played football, and you guys know how much I love Reece James, and anytime I get to see him play, I'm a happy boy. And outside of Reece James, I would say for the second week in a row, I believe now, Harry Wilson, former Liverpool player, comes on in the 82nd minute and scores in the 83rd to win. Well, Fulham was already up 1-0 to clinch the game for Fulham. And then he actually later had a goal disallowed in the 93rd as well. So a very good couple of weeks for Harry Wilson, getting to a couple late winners last weekend. Well, a late equalizer and then late winner last weekend, and then a late icing on the cake goal, win clinching moment, if you will. And just very funny to me that he comes on and 60 seconds later is celebrating a goal. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's very, very fun. And another moment being the Ipswich neutral this year that I will say them getting their first win of the season, their first win in the Premier League since 2002. So 22 years in the making. And those Ipswich fans, I'm sure, enjoyed that one. They would have waited nearly a quarter of a century for that, and I just hope that they enjoyed it, and hopefully it's the first of many. And I would, like I said, have said over the podcast, I would love to see Ipswich stay up. It would be a very nice story, I think. Looking at the relegation zone now, moving into that segment. How about that flawless transition? But yeah, looking at that from 14th to 18th, which is where the relegation zone obviously starts, there's only 5 points separating it. And then from 15th, only 3 points separating it. Southampton sitting at the bottom of the table with 4 points. 4 points away from safety, as Ipswich are 4 points up on them. As I've said multiple times, I sadly don't see Southampton turning this around. I'm sure they'll have like wins throughout the season, of course, and get some draws and rack up a few more points. But at this moment in time, just really not looking likely like they will stay up. Wolves, I do think that we are now seeing them turn that corner that I have been saying they will all season. So listen to me. Unless they end up actually getting relegated, then we'll act like I wasn't as cocky. But I do think that this is them turning it around. They gained points last weekend, get their first win of the season this weekend, and I do think that it's just that Wolves turn around, slow start, and then they end up being just fine and finishing 12th or 13th or something like that. I do think Wolves will be fine, but they are still in the relegation zone, so we do still talk about them. And then just above them is Crystal Palace. Once again, I do think they will turn this around, but it is looking a little bit harder than I think many people would have thought, as they were on the receiving end of that Fulham 2-0. So definitely not the best start to the season for Crystal Palace. I do think that they have more than enough talent to get out of this. You know, you got guys like Chalobah, Gurhey, Klein, Mitchell, Sarr, Mateta. Dean Henderson has had a pretty good season, I would say, pretty quietly in their goal. But yeah, no, just something's not clicking for them at the moment, which maybe it's the Elise loss in the summer. Eze, I believe, might be hurt at the moment because he has not played for a little bit. So, missing some crucial players and missing some crucial pieces, I think. I do think that they will turn it around. Just above them is, of course, Ipswich, as we have talked about a little bit. 2 points ahead of Ipswich are Everton and Leicester in 16th and 15th, respectively. Leicester and Everton are two funny cases because I could see them both feasibly staying up, but then I could also see them both feasibly going down. As I've said for Everton, is this the season where they do go down? They still don't look great nor convincing in Leicester, just because maybe they just don't have it. You know what I mean? Like, they just came back up. Not many changes to the team in the transfer window. I know they lost Dewsbury Hall, who's now at Chelsea, but outside of that, not many big recruitments off the top of my head. I know they made recruitments, but none that felt like game changers. But maybe they have enough to stay up. And then just above them is West Ham, who feels pretty safe at the moment, but definitely a slow start to the season for them as well. Very disappointing start, I would say. We'll see, right? I think the relegation zone is definitely a very interesting one to watch, so definitely keep watching that, because I do think it's some of the more fun, not fun because fun feels wrong, being like, oh yeah, it's so much fun watching three clubs go down at the end of the year, but definitely one of the most intriguing parts, I would say, of the Premier League is the relegation zone. Moving into the European places, though, of course, from third all the way down to ninth, only 2 points separating it. And then if you want to go down to all the way down to 11th and 12th, only like 3 to 4 points separating that. So basically Europe is just everyone that's not in and around the relegation zone at this moment in time in the Prem. But right now Chelsea's sitting pretty in third on goal difference. I still think that they do qualify for Champions League. A big result, I would say, against Arsenal, showing some gut and character to come back from 1-0. I came back from 1-0 down. I still think that they do need a new goalkeeper. Robert Sanchez is not the answer, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. I will say I did very much enjoy the Chelsea players sticking it to Kai Havertz, who famously left the club and then, was a little bit of a child about it and shushed the Chelsea fans this weekend when he scored an offside goal, and then proceeded to just get bodied by Caicedo, Fofana, and Reece James at separate times throughout the game. So as a fan, you kind of like those moments. Sitting just below Chelsea, as we just talked about, is Arsenal. who, not saying their title race is over, but they definitely don't have that title race mentality. When you kind of look at the quotes that Mikel Arteta has said, or some players are saying, saying that they dominate Chelsea. I don't think they did. I could be a little bit biased, but I really thought it was a pretty even match. I wouldn't say anybody dominated anyone, and just these quotes that Arteta kind of has kind of shows you why Arsenal kind of always fumble it at the last minute. They just, as I've said on the podcast, they don't have that winner's mentality. I really just don't see it. And now they're currently, once again, going to preface this by saying their title race isn't over in my opinion, but currently 9 points off of the top spot. 4 points off of Man City in second. They're currently, obviously, more so in the top 4 race than they are in the title race. I think definitely not the ideal start to their title race. We'll see what happens, of course, because it is still a very long season. But yeah, at this moment in time, just kind of looking more like a top 4 contender than a title contender. Just behind them is Nottingham Forest, who at one point in the weekend was actually 3rd on goal difference, but now, of course, are down to 5th. But just what a great start to the season Nottingham Forest are, in fact, having. Some players are playing out of their skins at the moment, and it is always just nice to see other teams in and around that hunt. Then you got Brighton, Fulham, Newcastle, Villa, all kind of tied on 18 points. Sorry, Brighton has 19, but the rest are tied on 18 points. Kind of same goes with them and Forest. It's just nice to see other teams kind of battling for these European spots. And of course, looking at the title race, at this moment in time, Liverpool 5 points up on Man City, as I've kind of talked about. And like I said, long season ahead, but right now I think Liverpool will be pretty content. 5 points up, 11 games in. There was a ridiculous tweet that I did see that I don't know who put it out, but I think it was an Arsenal fan. Shocking, an Arsenal fan with a bad take. Had said about if Liverpool bottle it from here, this has got to be one of the biggest ball jobs in history of the league. No, it's not. Only 5 points up, just 11 games in. There's a lot of season left. 5 points feels like a lot, but 5 points is not a lot when there's 11 games. When we're 11 games into the season. Sorry, I think I just said 11 games left. 11 games into the season. 5 points is not a lot. If there was like 5 games left, 5 points is a lot. There's like many games left, 27 games left. Yeah, we still got a good few games to go. And like I said, I believe it came from an Arsenal fan. A little bit ironic since 2 seasons ago they spent like over 200 nights at the top of the Premier League and then lost it. Very Arsenal of them, I will say that much. But yeah, no, I think Liverpool will be very pleased at this moment in time heading into the international break, 5 points up, and City just not looking like City. Arsenal kind of more so in the top 4 race at the moment. I think Liverpool is sitting pretty at the top at this moment in time. Like I said, long season, but I don't think they've got many complaints at this moment in time. And with all this being said, that does conclude this episode of the Maple Footy Podcast. And of course, no Premier League this coming weekend, internationals. So I will be covering Canada's 2 international games. Very excited to watch those because I love covering those boys. Absolutely love covering the men's national team. But yeah, so the episodes will not be coming out on Tuesdays next week, at least. Coming out sometime after their games against Suriname. They play Suriname on this Friday. So it'll come out probably the Saturday or Sunday. And then they play them again on, I believe it's Tuesday. It is Tuesday. So that will probably come out on next Wednesday or Thursday. So like I said, no Tuesday upload for the Maple Footy Podcast this coming week. But you will get 2 episodes in place of that. And it will be covering Canada's Nations League games with Suriname. Hopefully they're good games. Hopefully I have a lot to cover. And yeah, please follow along. Thank you for listening. All that fun stuff. And yeah, just once again, just want to really thank you for listening. So thank you. If you have listened to this spiel, if you did a nice little double header of the Forge Cavalry and then the Prem recap, I do appreciate you. So thank you. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates at Official Sam Little on Instagram, where I am most active. And until next time, live, laugh, little.